Good morning, dear student. Good morning to all of you. I welcome Professor S.R. Bhatt for delivering a lecture in this training. Before he start his lecture, I will briefly introduce him. Most of you are working with Brassica and biotechnology will be knowing about Professor S.R. Bhatt. For the benefit of others, Professor S.R. Bhatt, he did his BSc Agriculture from University of Agriculture Sciences, Bangalore in 1975. And masters in also in University of Agriculture Sciences, Bangalore in 1977. He did a PhD in plant biology from University of Birmingham, UK. And then he also did postdoc from McGill University, Montreal, Canada. And later he worked in NPPGR and then in NRC on plant biotechnology. He served as professor for NRC plant biotechnology. His research work mainly focus on Brassica CMS development. He has developed several CMS lines, and the CMS line developed from Moricandia arvensis was used for development of the first mustard hybrid in the country, and several of his CMS lines are currently used by the breeders. Currently, he is emeritus scientist at National Institute for Plant Biotechnology. To this topic is very close to his heart, as he has served as vice president for the agriculture section of RCGM, and he has vast experience in the regulation of GE crop. Hence, I requested Dr. S.R. Bhatt to deliver his lecture. In addition to this, he is also an excellent teacher. He has guided several MSc and PhD students. Many of them are holding very high positions in the country in agriculture research and management. With his brief words, I request Professor S.R. Bhatt to deliver his lecture. Thank you, sir. Thank you for accepting our invitation.
Thank you, Dr. Viswanathan. Can we have these lights? Is it okay? Yeah. The topic that was given to me is the regulation of gene-edited crops. This training program, I believe, is about genome editing. So the obvious question comes, how do you take these genome-edited crops forward? In fact, there is a lot of debate going on all around as to how we should treat them. You might have had some glimpse of it, I believe, in some of the lectures in the past. Or is it nothing has been covered about this? Nothing has been covered? Okay. We are all surrounded by technologies. If I ask you how many technologies you have used today since morning, can you name or can you count how many you might have accessed since morning? Any ballpark figure? If I say 100, would that be too much? Say yes or no. If I say 1,000, perhaps not. You are wrong. Because the moment you get up, you might have switched on the light, electricity, and all the technologies that go in producing, distributing electricity and all that kind. You might have seen the watch, clock, what all has gone around. Brushing the teeth, water, you name it, sink, everything is a technology. And there are, in fact, we are not at all aware of how many technologies we are accessing at any single moment. So, in that context, this is also a technology. And technology development, in fact, is progressing extremely fast during the 21st century. If I have to name a few, we have artificial intelligence, robotics. In fact, medicine is going to transform very shortly because doctors will become obsolete, computers will take over, robotics will take over. Already surgeries are being conducted by the robotics. We have self-driving cars, already tested. Stem cell biology, gene editing, synthetic biology, gene drive, you name it. I can list any number of technologies that are nascent technologies coming up or already shown that they can be effectively used on a day-to-day basis. But every technology needs regulation. Are our regulations keeping pace with them? In most of the cases, not. Just to give you one example, we have self-driving vehicles. You all know self-driving vehicles are available now and they have been tested extensively. The problem is, if that comes on the road, if there is an accident, who should be held responsible? Who should be held responsible? The company? The person who has developed that software? Or in case there is going to be an accident, inevitable, who should decide? These are the questions facing the technology. Just to give you one example, it's extremely difficult, and people have been surveyed for this, and people say that no, we should have the control. The person who is traveling should have the control. If that is the case, will they be ready to take this one? They say no. So these are the problems facing most of the technologies today, that the regulation has not kept pace with that. And the same is the story with the genome editing also. We will consider genome editing in detail, but before that, perhaps most of you know, it's a very precise method of manipulation at the nucleotide level. It's low cost. It could be done in modest laboratory. Okay? So, unlike the technology, nuclear technology, for example, any of these satellite technologies, they cannot be done by individuals in their own laboratories, or you would require national level efforts, even multinational level efforts. This is not so. It's traceability as to who did it, where it is, very difficult to find out. And there is potential for misuse, because we have already known about the case of He Jinkoi. You know what is it? Yes, disregarding all the moral and ethical issues, he went ahead and made modifications of a gene, CRR5, in the hope of, curing the AIDS, and that has created a problem. That means this technology, because it is so simple, it could be done by anybody, it cannot be easily controlled. Misuse is most likely, in spite of everything. So we need to really consider how should we really handle this technology. It's a very serious issue, because all of you are now trained in this, and tomorrow you will be doing those editings. Innocently, you might do something which might go wrong later on. So, are we ready to accept the challenges and the responsibilities that go with the technology? That's what let us consider here. So, what I'm trying to cover in this regulation, what are the regulations in place in transgenics? Because most of the first generation transgenics, or the GMOs, regulations are in place in almost all countries. So whatever comes for this technology has to be derived from that earlier one. So let us know what is available, what is in hand, what are the issues there, and how do we really assess the risk? Because these are not something going to be entirely new. It will be something, a modification of those risks, whatever the risks were there with the GMOs. So what countries are thinking about it? How do we really go about it? In fact, there are no explicit rules about genome edited crops in most of the countries. Argentina has brought out one. But other than that, most of the countries are trying to tweak the existing laws and regulations to fit this new technology. And that has also caused some concerns. So we'll consider those concerns about how the people are perceiving it, how it is going to affect the trade, labeling, traceability, and some of the requirements as per the earlier laws, because it steps on some of those aspects. And after that, if there is something more, then we can take up the questions. The GMO regulations in India are under the Environment Protection Act of 1986. It is called the Rules 1989, Rules for Manufacture, Use, Import, Export, Storage, and of hazardous microbes as well as GMOs or cells. This is the set of rules under the Act 1986. It is available on the DBT website, which you can download and see what are the details. Because agriculture commodities are traded across the countries, because some of them are traded for food purposes. Although some of the countries do not grow transgenics, they don't allow, but still they import. For example, soybean oil, many countries import. We also have canola oils in this country. So the rules and regulations of different countries need to be respected. That is why international harmonizations of rules, because if there is mismatch between the countries, trade will be affected. Lots of things will be going wrong. There is a convention called the Convention on Biological Diversity. Under that, a Cartagena Protocol on Biosafety was designed, and it has been ratified by most of the countries, nearly 170 countries. But unfortunately, some of the major countries which are producing GMOs are not signatories. So this creates again a problem. If USA, Canada, and Argentina, who are the topmost countries producing GMOs, if they do not adhere to these protocols, then how effective such protocols would be. So there are conflicts between the nations as to what should be called a transgenic even. So under these situations, how do you really deal with the laws? How do you devise things that are acceptable to all? So what is covered under Rule 89? Because many people keep on asking in DBT and other places that, sir, whether the genome edited crops will be regulated or not. Okay. Repeatedly, lots of people seem to think that, oh, there is no transgene, there is nothing, so it should not be regulated. If you see the Rule 89, all kinds of GMOs, including microbes, cells, tissues, whole organisms, are covered here under this rule. Every activity related to that, whether it is import, export, storage, everything is covered under that. All types of technologies. In fact, if you see the DBT, this one, even those technologies which are not on the horizon, which are only contempt, well, one can think of that, it might, even that is covered. We Indians are so clever. We will make rules for things which are not even existing. So this Rule 89 is all inclusive. That's why sometimes it is difficult to wriggle out of these rules, even if you want to, because it's already covered, everything is covered. So I will first ask you, what do you know about transgenics? What is a transgenic according to you? It's an organism carrying a foreign DNA? That's fine. So any organism carrying foreign DNA will be a transgenic. What about if I put a rice DNA back into rice, will it be transgenic? Huh? Cisgenic, transgenic, and all kinds of things are the same to me. in my opinion, these are all, you know, playing on the words. I'll come to those playing on the words at the end. Transgenics, cisgenics included. Is it necessary that it should be stably integrated in the genome or not? If it is not stably integrated, it's not transgenic? No? Okay, I'll take your opinion. Then I'll put one more. It is transmitted to the progeny. It has to be transmitted. If it is not transmitted, it's not transgenic. So it has to be stably integrated. It has to be foreign DNA or cisgenics, whatever. But it has to be transmitted to the next generation. How many of you agree to this? Raise your hands. No, this is how the debate goes on. Since you are all now aware of the technologies, you should be able to say yes or no, or if you differ with this.
So it is not necessary. Like, is it progeny transfer? Then we call it as transgenic. Because in case of medical science, if they will cure.
Let us not go to medical science. We stick to plant science. If I go to medical, there are far too many things. Stick to plants.
It might depend on the crop because for some crops we are having the seeds, for some crops we might have the leaves or some other parts of the plant. So in one generation when the introduction of the foreign DNA is happening, if someone is consuming
No, don't go to consumption. I am asking, is it necessary for a transgenic to transmit its transgene to the progeny? Pardon? Everybody is doing. What I am saying is tomorrow if you go, you have taken a training, if somebody says that, is it necessary that the DNA should be transmitted, inherited to the progeny? Is it a requirement for it to be called transgenic? In fact, one can think of designing where it will not go to the progeny. I will come to that example. In fact, that is also creating a problem. Okay? Should it express the foreign gene? Is it a condition? If it does not express, will it be still called a transgenic? Say yes or no. It has to express? No? So now tell me, what is a transgenic? Given all this. These are the sort of questions repeatedly keep coming. I have been on the RCGM. These are the sort of things even the people who are dealing with the technologies often keep asking. That's why I put this, that you have to sharpen your logic, because regulation is all law, it is like a law. You have to use your science and also logic. Okay? So, in fact, if you think of this, there is no common agreement among nations as to what should be called a transgenic. Okay? You will be surprised. So, what is a transgenic? Sorry. Some of the terms, I'll take the last one. Transgenic or GMO is an organism with genetic alteration effected using recombination DNA technology. Whether the gene is expressed, whether it is a gene or not is also a question. It could be any dump of DNA sequence. If the organism contains, it is not necessary that it has to express. It is not necessary that it has to be transmitted. Okay? It just contains. Okay? That's the requirement. This is as per the Indian rule. Okay? We are now dealing with the Indian situation. So now tell me, we have virologists, and if they engineer a gene into a virus, tobacco mosaic virus, which produces a pharma drug, and infect the virus on tobacco. So will that tobacco plant be transgenic? Hmm? How? No, the tobacco plant does not contain the, you know, modified genome. It is not into its genome. It is neither transmitted. So, what is a transgenic there? It's the virus which is transgenic. Will the plant be transgenic? No. So, if such an application comes, how should I deal with in RCGM?
Sir, there are cases where the cross-kingdom transfer of genetic material happens.
No, forget about that. I am asking only that you are going for the hypothetical situation, cross-kingdom transfer. What is that? A person comes, am I regular? In US, there is a system. If somebody does not know, he is trying to do something, he can write to the US authorities under the am I regulated? In the sense, I do not know, I would like to do this. Will it call for regulation? It's called am I regulated? So then they will examine, they will say yes or they will say no, giving their arguments and rules. So if somebody comes to me or to you that here is a transgenic, it does not contain transgene or anything in its own genome, but carries a virus which contains a transgene. So should it be regulated or not? What would you say? Okay, I'll leave that question a bit later. Say, what are the definitions? Gene technology, application of gene engineering, including self-cloning and cell hybridization. Genetic engineering, technique by which heritable material which does not usually occur or will not occur naturally, underline this, in the organism or cell concerned, generated outside the organism or cell, that means in vitro, is inserted into said cell or organism. It shall also mean the formation of new combination of genetic material by incorporation of a cell into a host cell, where they occur naturally, self-cloning, as well as modification of organism or in a cell by deletion or removal of parts of. So, if you read this now, what will you say to the tobacco plant with a modified virus? Hmm? Why? Which one will you apply to say that?
Naturally, it's not there. So we are providing now artificial.
Okay, one. Anything else? See, it is incorporation of this one into another organism. Could also be still transgenic. Okay? As per Indian, this one, it falls into that category. It also falls into transgenic category in many other situations as well. Okay? These sort of things are coming up. For example, in the horticulture, you have rootstock and scions. If the rootstock is transgenic, scion is not, then will that plant be transgenic? Or only rootstock will be transgenic, scion will not be? Pardon? Transgenic, non-transgenic. So these are the things. We will come to that because my intention is that you will get clarity only when you have these conflicting questions posed before you. As we go, we will see how it could be resolved. Okay? So as far as India is concerned, anything that involves some rDNA technology, even historic rDNA technology, you might say that, oh, this plant was not modified, but something that it contains was modified somewhere in the past. Okay, like Bt gene, nobody has immediately introduced into the recent variety. It was introduced long back one event was there and everybody is doing a backcross breeding. Okay? So it contains somewhere in the history, it has a rDNA modification. That will also be transgenic. Just to give you a brief history as to why this regulation about transgenics came about. When I was a student of genetics in 75, our professor said that there is a moratorium on genetic experiments. We did not understand genetic engineering then. We thought that, oh, now we cannot do even plant breeding. Because that is how it was conveyed. We didn't, and nobody knew about all these technologies. A Cohen-Byers presentation of gene splicing in a Gordon conference kicked up a controversy as to whether we should be doing this, even at that time. It is not these activities who started this, it is the scientists responsible for the technology who had invented something new. They raised questions as to whether we should be really doing experiments of this kind at that time when they were still doing with the bacteria. And Paul Berg, a Nobel laureate, he was asked to lead this, to formulate guidelines, because they said that we will not conduct any experiments because it might lead to some very dangerous thing. They might create a microbe which is going to be catastrophic. So they said that we will not conduct experiments until we formulate guidelines as to how to go. This is very important to know, because many times activists think that, oh, we are pushing the technology. It is not that. Scientists have been behaving very responsibly from the beginning. Okay? And these proposals were discussed in the Asilomar conference, and in 76 the guidelines came. So people waited for 3 years for the guidelines to come before they embarked on experiments. See the contrast of the gene-edited babies. See, when people were really adhering, very responsible, now we have loose scientists who disregard everything. Because if you think of He Jiankang, this one, he had connection with the leaders of the technology, including Jennifer Doudna's lab. But he disregarded everything and brought disgrace to the entire scientific community. We should be aware of this, that what am I doing? Is it going to really paint every one of us in bad light? If that is done, it will be very difficult for real technology developers to take it forward. We might deny the society the benefits of the technology. So it is important to know this, how it came about. So when the transgenics were produced in 86, similarly the same concerns of doing some harm was voiced, and accordingly the regulations were developed, first in the developed countries and then in other countries where the transgenics came into being. Okay? This is about this. If you want to read about this, there is a review by Paul Berg in Annual Reviews, I think 2010 or so, I don't remember. It's a very good account of the entire way these things have come about, regulation has come about. You could read there. I'll give you the references. I have prepared a handout, but unfortunately I could not get it printed. I'll give you that. So how do we regulate transgenics? One of the important things is the precautionary principle. This is an environmental, people are using this very often. What's the precautionary principle? When a human activity may lead to morally unacceptable harm, that is scientifically plausible but uncertain. We are not sure that it will happen, but it is likely. Action shall be taken to avoid or diminish that harm. This is the most important principle on which every transgenic or GMO now or in the future will be tested. That means we perceive some harm, which may or may not really be happening in reality, that's enough. In a way, it's a travesty of justice. That means every transgenic is a culprit unless proved otherwise. Normally, in the regular course, we say that everybody is innocent until he is proven guilty. This is just the opposite, because these are the realities. So we have been saying that use of, in fact, some of the people are saying that use of precautionary principle is flawed. And that is the problem. Some of the people say that it is very difficult to now take it back, because it was started with a good intention, but it has been misused by the activists to say that, you see, we are told it was wrong. That is why they have been testing. Because if you suspect something without basis, it would really do the harm. So what do we mean by morally unacceptable harm? Harm to humans or environment that is threatening to human life or health, serious and effectively irreversible. Some of these things are likely in the sense that if some transgene might go out and create a havoc, let us say. Have you heard of this, what is that? Gene drive. Have you heard of this? No? What is a gene drive? Has it been used anywhere? Gene drive technology? Mosquito control. Okay. Mosquito control gives me another example, wonderful example. Mosquito control, there are two types of technologies available now. One is a bacteria called Wolbachia. It's a naturally occurring bacterium called Wolbachia, which occurs in Drosophila. When it is introduced into mosquitoes, those mosquitoes will not harbor most of the common viruses like dengue, malaria, this and that. Okay? So, will that mosquito be a transgenic? Wolbachia infected, Wolbachia which naturally infects Drosophila has now been introduced into Aedes mosquito. In fact, India has imported some for experimental purpose. Will that be transgenic? Huh? Yes, no? Well, it's really not necessarily this one, because it is one of the hosts, natural hosts also, although mosquitoes do not carry them, but mosquito is a host. So it is, in nature one can find if one searches it. So it is not something unnatural. It in fact does not call as a transgenic. It came into our CGM also. But it has been regulated for a different purpose, not as a transgenic. Okay? So that's another example. There is another method called a gene drive, wherein a gene is introduced into Aedes mosquito that affects the sex of the progeny. That means when such males mate with the female, all the progenies will be male. All the progenies will become male. Okay? I will not go into the detail. Then what happens? Those males will in turn mate with the next generation of female mosquitoes and will produce only males. In a couple of generations, it will be all male population. There will be nothing left. Okay? So that is what is called gene drive. A particular gene will be spreading itself at the extinction of all the others. Okay? So those sorts of precaution, in those cases there is to be precautionary principle, because if you release those sort of things, it could irreversibly harm this. In fact, this technology has also been tested in some islands and has been found to be very effective. It can wipe out the population. The only question is, what if this gene goes to some other species, which we do not know? It will wipe out the species. So entomologists are seriously debating about that. That's why the Wolbachia is more amenable, looks like, because it will, those mosquitoes will continue to breed, but only thing they will not be bringing in those viruses, the problem. Whereas in the other case, they will completely wipe out. So these are the sort of morally unacceptable harm categories. In India, there are, how much time do I have? Hi? You warned me before 5 minutes. I will accelerate. We have different committees. Institute Biosafety Committee at the institute level, experimentation. We have Review Committee on Genetic Manipulation. This is a statutory body where I was vice chair for agriculture for quite some time. And here basically we design everything as to what experiments to be conducted, what are the requirements, whether it is comes under regulation or not. Everything is decided by this committee. This is a scientific committee for both agriculture as well as pharma sector. That's how I know all these Wolbachia and other stories also. There is an advisory committee, RDNA advisory committee. It's a advisory nature in the sense it will look to what is happening around the globe in terms of technology, what are the things that we might have to adopt in terms of law, regulations, what we should be doing. Somebody might have reported some bad effects about some transgenics. Supposing those transgenics are cultivated in India, what steps we should take? Those sort of, it will monitor what is going on around the world and advise the government or the DBT in this case as to what steps we should be taking. In fact, RDNA Advisory Committee highlighted that quite long back that genome editing technology is coming, we should think of formulating guidelines. Then there is Genetic Engineering Appraisal Committee under the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. It's an interministerial committee for commercial cultivation and release. It's also the one that gives permission for open field trials and those sort of things. It works in close collaboration with RCGM because all the experiments, risk analysis, everything is done by this, and those reports are communicated to GAC for it to take decisions. And there are state level biotechnology coordination committee and district level committees. These are basically, agriculture in India is a state subject. So anything that you do, you will have to have state government permissions. Central government cannot impose anything. So that's why these are the ones which will be monitoring various experiments whenever they are approved. Okay, this is the basic structure of our regulation. There are also aspects because crops are consumed. Food industry also comes into play. You might approve something for cultivation, but it will ultimately enter into food chain. We have to think of food safety also. So we have Food Safety Standards Act 2006. Under that, we examine the risks and the standards. What are the limits to which we should be really imposing about the transgenics, about the gene expression, toxicity, whatever. Okay, and also there is an international commission, Codex Alimentarius, which sets the standards for food. Okay, if something is exceeding this, it's not acceptable. So all those, what are the standards, what should be the code of practices, guidelines, recommendations, everything is set by this Codex Alimentarius, and the Indian government closely follows that for approval of any transgenics for food purpose. And how do we assess risk? We assess the risk based on what are the likely hazards possible. Okay, and then risk is a probability of occurrence of a hazard. Okay, what's the likely chance? One would say that I am driving, there is likelihood that there is a accident happening. But it's a probability. It does not happen invariably. Sometimes it will never happen for an individual, thankfully. But some people do get So we do not know. There is a probability. So what's the probability that a person taking out a vehicle will meet with an accident? That we can calculate. So that's the risk of taking out a car. Similarly, for transgenics, we can define what is the probability of occurrence of various kinds of hazards. And then if that is likely to happen, governments will think of, okay, this is the place where there is going to be accidents repeatedly. We will examine, maybe we will have to put a barrier there or a red light. Okay? So those are the sort of mitigating the hazards. And in case, sorry, what has happened? Something, or do I go back? Okay. And in case there is an accident, then what do? We have to have ambulance services, this and that, okay? Those sort of things. This is what is called risk management. And we do this on a case-by-case basis because there are some general guidelines, but each of the events of a transgenic is a separate case. You cannot say that, okay, that was done, so it will also be okay for this. Just like every vehicle needs to pass a road safety test, although road safety tests are common, but every vehicle has to go. Similarly here, it has to be case by case, event by event. What do you mean by event? Any one of you know what's an event? Pardon? It's a very important term, which will also come in gene edited when we take up the gene edited crops. First, let us understand what is transgenic. It becomes easy to apply the same rules for gene edited crops. What's an event? Have you ever come across? You do agrobacterium mediated transformation. What happens? You do an experiment, you get 10 transgenics. 10 events. So what is a 10 event?
Integration of gene in different locations. Like
Okay.
one location here is one event, second.
Yeah. So it could be same experiments, but the resulting individuals could be different. So that is what is called event based. So this is a pictorial, this one, cartoon, perception of a risk. You think, oh, this is going to fall. And then you will discuss as to, whether it's going to fall today, right now, or under what condition. If there is a rain, it's going to, in a sense, you play out all those scenarios. And then if it does happen, what's the contingency plan? I should be running if it happens right now. So this is basically the same sort of principles. And this sort of risk assessment is routinely applied in all industries. All industries. Okay? Every contingency plan is also put in place. So it is not something that it happens only for transgenics. We are adopting the same sort of principles, which is widely used in all industries, particularly chemical industry, toxic, this one and all that. So how do you really assess the risk? In the case of transgenics, what's the gene donor? Is it from a pathogen or a normally useful organism? Because if it's from pathogen, there is a probability that it can be harmful. What's the sequence? Even if it's from a 35S, a tobacco mosaic virus, it could still be something which could be still used, like 35S promoter. Okay? So sequence being used is again the next question. What are the characteristics of the recipients, where it is going, and what will be the effect there? What trait it confers? Okay? And if it causes something, then that's a point where we will think of, if this happens, what will happen? If it expresses a Bt gene, what is going to happen, for example? Are there going to be any pleiotropic effects? In the sense, okay, it does this, but it will also do this. Sometimes it happens, especially if you are doing a transcription factor, because it will affect several things. So it might affect the other pathways. Say, for example, with the Bt cotton, it was found that the Bt cottons were slightly earlier than the traditional conventional varieties, counterparts, non-transgenic counterparts. Okay, Bt will not make it early. Earliness genes are different, we know. Okay, they will come to harvest soon. So what's the reason? In fact, in the beginning, people used to say, no, it is not true. But it was true that Bt cotton fields were harvested at least 10 days earlier. So the field became available 10 days earlier than the traditional varieties. Why? It's a pleiotropic effect, but indirect effect. It's not a direct effect of the Bt gene. It has nothing to do with Bt. It's because no, all kinds of, it's a physiological effect. It's primarily because in the absence of Bt, invariably, in spite of plant protection measures, balls used to drop because some insects will infect. Okay? So if there is a couple of cotton balls dropping, plant has a tendency to produce more flowers to compensate for. Okay? Because every plant has a carrying capacity, X number of balls. Okay? So when it is not there, it will tend to produce late flowers, which may not ultimately form, but it will continue to be there in the field. Okay? So that, whereas in the Bt, all the early flowers were retained, and that's how plant reached the carrying capacity, it turned off. So this is a sort of pleiotropic unexpected effect. We were not anticipating it, but it's plausible on a hindsight. So those sort of things also will be there in some cases. Environment into which it is released, because this is important for example, gene flow we are talking about. It might go to wild species. Many countries do not have wild species. For example, India does not have wild species of cotton growing around. So we have no question, because if that's a concern, then that concern does not apply to us. It might apply to US, where it has wild species, let us say. So this is environment where it is considered. Likewise, there are whole lot of things, application for which it is put, whether it is going to be used for feed, whether it is going to be used for food, or whether it is to be consumed raw or cooked. All these things will come into play in risk assessment. It's a very, very, very exhaustive list where people will have to sit and think about each one of them and devise methods to manage. Basically, we have to define what are our goals of protection. What is it that you want to do? You will have concern, but it's important what is our protection goal. For example, we want to save the environment. How will you define saving the environment? Maybe you should not cultivate crop to save the environment in many cases. Agriculture itself is a disturbance to biodiversity. If you go with that extreme, then you will not allow even agriculture. Monoculture is not something that is desirable. So we will have to define a protection goal. What is it that you want to do? And that has to be pragmatic. It cannot be ideal. And devise biosafety containment conditions for testing of those sort of concerns. And most important is define the test to be conducted. What tests for what purpose? Sometimes we simply recommend tests and it becomes impossible to handle. Okay? The second thing is appropriate experiments and define the endpoints. Where do you stop? I'll give you one instance where we said that we should not be doing any more this kind of work. For example, effect of transgenic Bt cotton transgenics on soil microbes. Okay? lot of data were generated. I said, we don't want this data because I knew what are the problems going to be. But quite a lot of members were enthusiastic because US has been doing this, has been doing. We'll generate data. Okay. We came about lot of changes. So microbes are extremely dynamic. Then the question came, well, there have been significant changes in the soil microbe profile. The question is whether we have significant changes in material. The most important point is, if I grow rice, if I grow cotton, and in the next, if I grow chickpea, if I study the soil microbes, they will be even far more varying than between a transgenic and non-transgenic. Which one I should say is the point which I should take? Which is greater? This soil dynamics is going to change invariably depending on the season, depending on the crop, whether it is irrigated, whether it is dry land. The same piece of land will throw up different sort of thing. The question is whether the microbes will come back subsequently. Those tests were not done. I said, we don't want this. I told you this. And if this sort of data are generated and put in the public domain, you will have hue and cry. You will be giving a fodder to activists who are against the technology. So that's why in most of the RCGMs we used to have, let us do only meaningful experiments. I also define what are our endpoints. Otherwise, you will be doing endlessly testing for everything. This is the case which is going on for this mustard transgenics. Okay, what will happen to honeybees? What will happen to honey? You will ask questions of all kinds which are totally irrelevant, and because you do not define the endpoints. Okay, this is enough. We don't want this. It's difficult to take such decisions, but we need to. And what are the safety standards? As I said, where do I draw the line? Is it arbitrary? Can I really justify with scientific this one? So these are the aspects of risk management, and basically these are the risks identified. It might cause a weed, it might cause, so such weeds can harm the environment, it might have non-target effects. Instead of the desirable pests being controlled, it might also affect honeybees, for example, silkworms, BT. Okay, that's why mulberry is taken out of the ambit, because silkworm castor, for example, is also used for silk production. So people are cautious about that. Toxicity, allergenicity, and effect on biodiversity. Okay, how it will affect. These are the common concerns raised, and there are many aspects of these. In the sense, it's not that simple. Once you sit down with an event, then you will come to know what are the things to ask. What do you use? We use the concept of substantial equivalence. That means a transgenic should be comparable to the non-transgenic. Okay, in overall this one, then we say that it is acceptable. This is the general approval system for the conventional transgenics. You have multiple events generated, they are tested in field trials, one or two are taken forward, and ultimately, if they found satisfactory in all respects, they will be released event by event. Okay, one event normally if it's released, that's enough. Then you can put it into other backgrounds. What are the triggers for regulations? Basically, as it exists, in the sense, what makes, whether it is process-based or product-based. In India, it is process-based. Anything with the rDNA technology will call for regulation. Okay? And similarly, many other countries follow this, process-based. In Canada, it is the novel traits, what they call. USA, also it is product-based. Okay, that, and Argentina, Bangladesh, Philippines. These are the countries which follow this. And I'll just go through some of the systems which will clarify you why this conflict which we discussed about transgenics arises. In USA, these are transgenics are covered by these three different Animal Plant Health Inspection Service, EPA, and FDA. Okay, so these are health inspection services. They will be looking for pests and diseases. If there is in the product, if the product carries something that is concern of the pest or disease, that will call for risk assessment. Say for example, if we introduce a gene from the host through particle bombardment, okay, and then according to US this one, it will not attract any regulation, because for them it is not, because it does not contain any sequences from the pests or pathogens. Okay, this is how, in fact, one of the turf grasses, bent grass, was approved, because they said it is not regulated, so you can leave it for cultivation. Okay, so if that sort of definition is there, it creates a problem. It might not be treated as transgenic in US, but what about other countries? If such a commodity is traded, will that be acceptable? Okay, that's how some of the conflicts come. So Environment Protection Agency, for example, in that case, it was a concern because it was a glyphosate resistant event which was likely to cause weediness. In fact, it did go out of this one control and became a weed in some cases. And if it is to be used for human consumption or feed for animals, it has to also get drug administration approval from this. So different agencies examine it from different angles, and unless all of them clear it, it cannot go. Canadian system looks for novel traits. Again, three different agencies handle it for different aspects. They regulate plants, livestock, veterinary biologicals, and fertilizers from the food inspection point of view, primarily similar to the US system. And they look for novelty. If the trait is novel or anything, then only it calls for. If it is something already there, existing in the convention, then it does not call for regulation. It's a very strange case. Okay. Fortunately, GMOs came under because there was always something new trait. Okay, it might even contain a transgene which is expressing an antibiotic and that, but it's a very loose sort of state of affairs. And now that the transgenics are in field, will the new transgenics with the same trait will they be novel? They will cease to become novel. So future transgenics will not be, let us say Bt transgenics will not be regulated. So these are sort of old rules which have been applied, because in these countries the existing rules or agencies were interested, whereas in India a new set of rules were created for transgenics. That is why these sort of distortions have happened. And if this is the case, what will happen to gene edited technologies? How will they treat them? European Union is against transgenics, and it is a very complicated system. There are individual sovereign nations, but the European Union has overriding effects on all the members. So this is what is creating problem. In fact, Brexit is one of those reasons why Britain wants to get out of these sort of things, because you have to follow everybody's rules. Even there is a provision for recall, and there is a period of 10 years. If an event is approved, it can be there on the market for 10 years. Afterwards, again, it has to come back for seeking approval. And there is also requirement for labeling. say in the US and all, there is no requirement that transgenics have to be labeled, the products. Okay? But there is a counter this one that saying that it does not contain GMOs. It's a negative effect of campaign that people are claiming that it's organic or it does not contain GMO. But there is no requirement for labeling. The argument there is if things are cleared as safe, then why do you require labeling? In a sense, it's only creating a negative vibe. But there are other people saying that no, we would like to be knowledgeable as to what we eat. But even US, Europe allows 0.9% admixture because they still do import things. Okay? And with the transgenics grown on a very large scale, it's impossible to avoid 100% admixtures. So they have kept a 0.9% admixture. That means if you have to regulate this, you need to be able to trace the event. If you cannot trace the event, then this becomes useless. So coming to the last part, what are the new breeding techniques? There are new innovations. One of them is site-directed nucleases or CRISPRs and these sort of things, ODMs. Now we can also do epigenetic modifications using the CRISPR technology. We can do reverse breeding. I will not go into details. We can do accelerated breeding, agroinfiltration, cisgenics, intragenesis, and all these kinds of things. Okay? And how are you going to handle those sort of things? For example, people are again distinguishing between different kinds of gene-edited products, SDN1, 2, 3, where there is a point mutation, where there is a small change of an amino acid or two, or there is a replacement of a larger. So these three categories, most of the countries are now thinking that we should categorize in these, and each one will be handled differently. For example, if it is SDN1, which contains a point mutation, maybe it requires less regulation. It does not evoke so much of risk. If you think of all those risks, if it only contains this, there is not going to be that much of risk. Maybe we should lower the the safety regulations for these two categories, whereas the third one will still be treated. So these are the sort of proposals on. So what are the sort of products that we are going to get in the future? They will be carrying altered DNA sequences and nothing else, isn't it? You have all gone through the whole sort of technologies available. A single point mutations can lead to a change in herbicide tolerance, for example. It contains nothing else, and one can prove that by sequencing. Okay? If that's one sort of, there could be others which altered epigenetic marks where there will be nothing in terms of nucleotide sequence change, but expression will be put off, for example. As I said, rootstock and scion combinations where one part is GMO, other is not. Those which do not carry altered genetic material, but they had an intermediate stage where GMO was used. One of the examples is this haploid technology that's available, wherein you can use a plant to pollinate, and it's a transgenic plant whose pollen will be, that genome will be eliminated. With the result, the product will be non-transgenic. Okay? For double haploid productions, that is a sort of situation where you can have a transgenic used to create a non-transgenic product. So these are the sort of things. So will those products be subjected to regulation? As per the existing rules in India, will they be subjected to regulation? It will be, because we have covered everything. So then how do you deal with that? Those are the sort of questions. Say, for example, rootstock scion is another important thing. So if the fruits produce on the scion, they will not carry any transgene or any such thing. Okay, it might protect the rootstock from fungal infection. Then should those fruits be labeled as, modified in any way? So there are people who might still say that no. The question is, RNA can travel. It can influence, that we know. So that is sufficient to raise an alarm risk. So we will have to really subject even those things for testing. So so how people are trying to think of application of existing technologies? Many countries say that existing frameworks will use it for a case by case. This one, like USA and Canada, say that okay, we will regulate it or not based on the existing. For example, mushroom, genome-edited mushroom, apple have been approved, okay, because they say that there is no change. So in US, as I said, their method is entirely different than India. It qualifies that it contains no change. Canada also, trait. It's an existing trait, so it is okay. So in New Zealand and Australia, they are revising the regulations and definitions of exemptions. That's where most of the countries are now talking about SDN 1 and 2 categories, trying to differentiate from them from the rest, so that you will have a different set of rules. Argentina has come out with this supplementary rules specifically for this genome-edited things to deal with. Say, for example, Australian proposal says cisgenic intragenesis SDN3 will be called, even this one, GM. Rootstock will be termed as GM. SDN1 and ODM are non-GMOs and intermediate deviation stages are non-GMOs, provided they are established so. For example, haploids, you have to establish each of the haploids produced as safe, in the sense they do not carry anything. Argentina uses the CPB, that's Cartagena Protocol, uses this novel combination of genetic material. This is very dicey to interpret. If you give it in the hands of lawyers, they will tear it apart. They will show everything is a transgenic. So it's extremely difficult. It's a legal battle different countries face in terms of defining this. The major problem comes if you are saying that it has to be traceable, it has to be this and that. Some of the genome-edited crops will be difficult to distinguish from the natural variation. Okay, we are creating alleles, null alleles in many cases for conferring, let us say, disease resistance, or to remove an anti-nutrient, which could be equivalent to any other natural mutation. In this case, how do you distinguish it? If you cannot distinguish it, you can't do anything. Unless somebody says that I have done it through genome editing, there is no way you can do it. So, in fact, I always have been telling that companies might be better off saying that it's not a transgenic, because they don't have to go for regulations, which is a very costly this one, and they don't have to pay patent rights for the, let us say, CRISPR technology. So long as they can protect their proprietary material, they would be better off saying so. So in that case, you are really promoting violation of rules. So in fact, labeling, if you come to again, say, how do you label when you cannot trace it, that it is actually a transgenic or genetically modified? There is no way. If there is no labeling, how do you go for traceability, which is a requirement in the European Union? In fact, European Court of Justice ruled that all the genome-edited crops will be subjected to regulation. although the advice of the members, scientific committees, all said that no, at least the SDN1 type should be treated as this one, but they came out against it, which is a big disappointment to the scientific community there. So it is going to create some trade conflicts, and countries might use it as a weapon to prevent import or export of commodities. For example, transgenic basmati we would not like to have because it will affect our trade, because the importing countries do not want it. So every country will take decision based on its trade interest rather than only on scientific judgments. Okay? So that is the real issue, is that how it affects our own interests. Say some of the GM foods, the fact check is US consumers are willing to pay 20% premium to avoid GM. So if that is the case, if the genome edited crops also are treated as GM, then they may not be really taken easily. Say for example, there is a tremendous increase in the sale of non-GMOs because some companies are saying that these are non-GMOs, although there is no requirement for labeling in US, but still companies are pushing because people are willing to pay. And there is a declining trust about institutions because some of the things that have happened recently in the US have led to some conflict. Say, new breeding technologies, accelerated breeding, these are the sort of things that people are now talking about to say that, oh, these are not transgenics, these are this and that, which it is not true. In the sense, in reality, they are. If you are thinking that they are using the rDNA technology, they are using it. So people are trying to convince that no. So this sort of things, people are saying that no, people are talking differently. Say there was a proposal to say that genome edited will be called bioengineered to replace GM, or abbreviated as BE, and they wanted to put QR codes, for the people who are buying foods to say whether they are GM or not, or smileys, which was vehemently opposed because smileys create a positive vibe, and you are trying to convey that they are good. So, say for example, US say that if they are not having anything that could be traceable, they are not regulated. For many, they are saying so. If it contains only point mutation, they are not regulated, for example. So that means they are declining oversight. People say that, oh, why are you not testing? You are saying that, no, they are not requiring it. People are also saying that there is lack of openness. We are saying that genome-edited varieties, gene-edited varieties are more precise than GMOs. So that means either you are lying earlier. Earlier we are saying that, oh, transformation is very precise, we are trying to put a known gene, this and that, whereas conventional breeding, you will insert all kinds of genes of interest and also other, for example, from the wild species. So you are saying earlier that was more precise, now you are saying this is more precise. So people are confused. So there is a lot of debate going on about these sort of conflicts. What we need to do is we have to balance regulation so that it does not become a burden. If everything is treated with the same set of rules and eyes, it costs about $35 million to clear one event. If you put that sort of a pressure on safety checking, some of the minor crops will never see the benefit of this. It is like saying that all the pharma companies today work on diseases which affect most of the people. Those diseases which affect a very small percentage of people, no company would like to invest because it costs trillions of dollars to bring a new drug in the market. You might have heard stories now. In fact, I think 2 weeks back there was an article in Science or Nature where people are now coming to cure their own disease. Cure yourself, something like that was the title. Because rare diseases, nobody is working. So unfortunately, if someone is struck with that disease, particularly genetic conditions, now people are taking science in their own hands. There are some very illustrious stories. You should read that article. So similarly, whereas in these cases, if we have that sort of burden of regulation, it will be impossible for all the so-called orphan crops we have been talking, genomics of orphan crops. They will remain orphan. In fact, think of horticulture industry, fruits, vegetables which are clonally propagated. Every single variety will have to be transformed or gene edited. Supposing I want to have seedless citrus, I need seedless lime, lemon, orange, quinoa, and each of the varieties in these categories, if each one has to be subjected to regulation, what it would cost. It will be impossible to get it clear. It will be too prohibitive. So we have to have some pragmatic view about how to regulate these genome edited. And we should not be falling prey to these emotional political calculations. It neither increases acceptance nor encourages innovation. Science communication is important but not sufficient. Just as you might have seen the fallout of CAA, communication, Citizenship Amendment Act. There has been complete chaos because miscommunication. But now trying to convince is also trying to, looking as bad. One of the things that comes is that we have been telling, DBT has been telling, CGM is also discussing, we should be communicating science. I had told in the RCGM, and I also still hold, that regulators of technology should not be engaged in public outreach activities. Because if you are a regulator, you should not go saying that, oh, this is safe, or that is safe, or this is this, or that is that. Because if Supreme Court judges start talking about, things, it will be conflict. So people on the regulatory body should not be speaking. It should be others. Okay? Responsible scientists should be talking, but not others. I think I'll come to the end of this. Thank you very much. I think I have taken more than what was allotted. And if you have one or two quick questions, maybe we can entertain. Okay, if there is nothing, thank you very much.
So thank you for this nice presentation. Being a student of you, I'd like to have one clarity. From 1983, the transgenic started. So after 30 years and so on, is there any detrimental effect anywhere? Because when car, as you have given the example, when this car and automobile, this kind of technology has come, so there was definitely risks, and people have seen that risks is happening. The accident is happening. Till that technology, people are buying cars. Okay. Similarly, when the transgenic technology also came, there people also hypothetically thought that there are so many risks. Is there in these 30 years in US, they are cultivating for long, is there any happening that, yes, those risks which we have hypotheticated, those are really happening?
Well, nothing unforeseen has happened anywhere in the world.
Then still the technology is debatable.
I tell you, nothing unforeseen has happened, but something that was foreseen did happen. For example, evolution of resistance did happen at certain places, for glyphosate, for example. It was not something unexpected. It was. But to say that something went out of hand, there is no evidence at all. most of it is simply wrong science. Although they have been highlighted by various things, as such there is nothing untoward has happened. Only problem with, you are comparing the automobile industry with this technology, there is a serious difference. Food is a private affair. Everybody wants to have their own privileges. Oh, I might like a particular one, particular variety or particular type and this and that. So it's a particular individual choice. And although we say that there is a shortage of food, developed countries do not see it so. That is why Europe, which has plenty to feed itself, is not bothered. And the same thing cannot be true for everybody. So we have really need for increasing production. We might require the technology. So it will vary, and the people with influence carry the opinion. Most of the times, because there is such a strong opposition in the European Union, transgenics have not taken off. Or even if they are produced in certain countries, they are really limited. That is the reason we cannot compare one with the other. Okay? Public perception is extremely important. You might have heard the name of Robert McNamara. He was a statistician. I'll give you the instance. He was a World Bank chairman also. Okay, he worked in the war as a statistician. There's an interesting story. Later on, he worked for Ford company, motor company. He was the person who was responsible for introducing that seat belts. Okay, seat belt is considered one of the cheapest and most useful innovation ever in the car industry with regard to safety. It's extremely cheap to implement, but it really provides protection. It has saved lives. Okay, but when for the first time the seat belts were introduced, the car sales dropped down, and Ford said, "What have you done? Are you closing my industry?" Because the introduction of seat belt gave an impression that the car is unsafe to the passengers. That is why people started, taking precaution. We should not buy cars. Oh, they say that it's going to create. This is what has happened with the GMO also. It's very difficult to take it off now. Okay, that is why even the GE technology will face these sort of hiccups.
Anybody, any question?
Thank you, sir. This is like a public question. We say that the Kellogg's and those kind of stuffs what we eat, they are having this transgenic kind of maize because they are being seen that being importing from US. So we have any regulations for importing of these processed products or
Yes,
anything?
Yes. Oh, any processed product or any GM, this one, even soybean, soy oil, there is a requirement. So Codus Alimentaris who administers that, and we follow that rules. Okay. So that's the whole problem. If it is being proved safe, why should we really again question that? Say with regard to drugs, once the drug is approved, although there will be warnings and this and that, it does not evoke negative. Here somehow, because alternative is available. Okay, that's the reason, and people are making use of it. For example, Hawaii today makes as much money by selling non-GM papaya as it does by growing GM papaya, because growing GM papaya has reduced the virus load all around. That is how they can grow non-GM papaya, which they sell to Europe, and the rest they will consume for the other countries and the US. So it benefits them both ways. Okay. China, which grows papaya transgenics, but not other transgenics, okay, for internal consumption. And China might really tilt the balance. In fact, Now it has bought all the technology and everything, and it has the resources, and also come out with promising gene edited this one. If China takes it in a big way, I think it will make a difference.
So any other question? So if there is no other question, so I want to thank Dr. S.R. Bhatt. So he has explained the topic beautifully with different examples of this regulation of gene edited crop. So sir, we want to give you a token of love from our side.
Oh. Thanks.
What should we do? How to really now do research in this so much regulation?
Research is no issue. Sorry, I might have